We went to New York and we went to these different kind of dance classes. And we found this woman who was an extraordinary dancer and had this real exciting, like Broadway dance class. And she came in and she choreographed this dance with Jennifer. We all looked at it and it was interesting, but it was too artistic. Didn't have the visceral, sexy stuff that we ended up getting in Flashdance. And so we were all kind of depressed, didn't know what to do. John Peters, his ex-wife, was dating a choreographer. And John said, you gotta meet Jeffrey. He'll come in, he'll help you. And so of course we did, we brought Jeffrey in. And Jeffrey has this energy, this enthusiasm. And he kind of captured what we wanted.
I started off by hiring somebody else, but we didn't sort of get on. I know, it just didn't work, really, the chemistry. And so Jeffrey had never been a choreographer, but he was a dancer. So working with him was terrific because he had absolutely no kind of ego.
The thing I first remembered that when I first met him was Adrian's real depth of sensitivity he had. He didn't come on with a lot of bravado, but he was very, very smart and sensitive about the way he wanted to approach things. And so that I kind of fell in under his wing in a sense. He made it a very, very warm and creative space to try things.
But when he started working with Jennifer, he says, we gotta get a double. We gotta get somebody who's a professional dancer to do this. She's not a trained dancer. I can make it work perfect and seamless with Jennifer as long as I get a double. And then he auditioned all these young ladies and found one that he thought was fantastic, and she ended up doing a lot of the dance work in the movie.
Yes, her name was Marine Jahan, and she happened to be French. And it's curious, really, how the press found out that she had done most of Jennifer's dancing, and they felt that it was kind of a cheat or something, I guess, you know, and there was a huge amount of press about it, which I think worked for the film, funny enough. You know, I think people were kind of fascinated by the fact that it was a kind of a composite, if you like.
He doesn't mean a thing to me.
Charles Rosen, who was our production designer, and Adrian would create different sets and different colors for each dance to make each one exciting and different. And Adrian always pushed his creative people to always come back with something fresh and new.
We worked really hard on the dances. I mean, for example, there was one dance that I knew I wanted it to be wet. I knew I wanted the dance to have water, because obviously water looks good on skin and it's kind of erotic and it flies around, you know what I'm saying, when it's backlit. And I'd never seen a wet dance, if you like. And I just remember the complete sort of skepticism on everybody's faces, you know, that there's no way that would work.
We had designed the sequence for the opening number with the water shot. And first day, the stuff was shot from the front, looking towards a backlit, milked plexiglass. And consequently, when the water fell, it didn't have this dynamic impact as we thought it was going to.
And Adrian, I remember the trouble we had with the light. The cord was twisted, and we couldn't get it right. It took forever, and we were falling behind, and the studio was yelling and hollering that we were not on schedule.
We went back to shoot the next day to shoot out the sequence, and I remember standing next to him as we were watching a rehearsal, and we were upstage watching the dancer from behind. And there was a Super Trooper spotlight out in front that was illuminating her, and Adrian saw her silhouette against that backlight and went, that's it! You know, that's what we gotta do for the water shots.
David LaChapelle, actually, I think, directed a video with Jennifer Lopez, which literally reprised, as I remember it, that particular sequence. I mean, almost shot by shot. That's, you know, very flattering.
It varied. There was, for example, the song Maniac, you know, where she's doing this rehearsal sequence in her loft. And we didn't know quite what it was going to be, so we just took Michael's cassette tape of it and went to the set and evolved it in the moment as we were working through it. Because it was a more of a montage, not a linear piece, we had the freedom to kind of experiment and grab bits as we were going. So that even the shooting of it was very spontaneous and kind of evolved on the floor. Whereas something like the final number, that was much more strategic. We knew that we had to hit certain emotional beats, so it would depend on what the sequence was.
1, 2, 3, 4!
Cynthia Rhodes was precast prior to me coming on, but she again was just a phenomenal facility to work with. Again, her sensibility and mine kind of matched. She was a very well-trained gymnast as well as a really good dancer, so it opened up for me a whole nother kind of approach to the choreography by doing the things like running up the wall and doing backflips and all this kind of really visceral athletic work. So her capabilities really challenged me to try and evolve something that would, one, fit the intention of the scene, but also give her something that she could sink her teeth into.
Each one of the dancers had their own theme for their dance. The one that blew me away, and I think was intended to blow the audience away, was the kabuki one, with all the psychedelic black and white tiles. That was impressive.
I remember seeing the trailer for the film, and it looked like this sweet kind of fairy tale, and then they went out to the street dance sequence, and people in the audience just spontaneously erupted in applause for a trailer. So there was that kind of pop cultural thrill of seeing something that had been brewing underground kind of break through to the mainstream.
We were in New York doing our casting and scouting locations and looking for things to do. We went to this roller rink. It was a Monday night, and the place was empty. And except in one corner, there were these kids who came in from Brooklyn and the Bronx, and every Monday they do their dances, and that's where breakdancing started. And Adrian and I looked at this and said, we gotta use this in the movie. We gotta figure out a place to put it.
They were called the Rocksteady crew, and at that stage they were kind of rival gangs in the Bronx that invented this sort of dancing. And I guess they kind of did it instead of fighting each other, you know what I'm saying?
He was just grabbing that stuff and doing it as he was going. It was like watching a great musician improvise.
It's nice when you sort of do research about Pittsburgh, and I read an article about a cop who had just retired, and he did this sort of routine, a kind of a mime routine, pretending to shoot people and waving them on with his feet in the traffic. And so we got him in, and even though he had retired, he agreed to direct traffic for us. And then it became a kind of a dance sequence, a kind of a mini dance sequence in the middle of the movie, which I think sort of worked well for the character because she drew on that, this woman. That's the stuff that she sort of used in her dances. The last scene in the movie is the audition that Jennifer Beals has to get into the dance theatre. So I try to make it embody stuff that we'd seen in the rest of the movie. There's a moment in it that kind of refers back to Sonny Johnson's scene at the ice skating where she falls and she should have got up and started again, and so you have that in the back of your mind.
But a slow glowing dream.
Brilliant. As an actor, I'll tell you that I related to that from the point of view of going in for an audition and flubbing a line, screwing up. I'd like to start over again because it's like, oh God, what's going to happen, We're going to start over again. And then from that moment on, you're holding your breath through the whole performance, through that whole audition, to see, is she going to screw up again?
So the first time we shot it, it kind of worked. It was pretty exciting. But I remember Michael Eisner at the studio said, it'd be really good if we could goose this, do another day's shooting, and just add to it, make it a little bit more climactic. And in the end, we employed a girl gymnast. We employed a break dancer who put a wig on and wore tights, and he really objected to putting this stuff on because he was a pretty macho guy, from the Bronx or whatever.
I remember we geared him up in his leotard and his white tights and a wig, and I said to him, do you mind cutting your mustache? He's like, that's it! I won't cut the mustache. So we had to do his shot with him hiding his face in particular so as not to, see the character with a mustache.
So in that last sequence, there are literally 4 people. There's Jennifer's face, there's Marion Johans dancing, plus the break dancer, plus the gymnast flying through the air.
And then the release, when she bursts out of the building, brand new day, brand new life, and there's her guy with a dozen roses and her dog. What woman could ask for more?